Thank you. Oh, and I now need to introduce our coming program. Is Mining Treasures from the Digital Archive is being presented by the Greene County librarian. Jane Millard is taking the floor even as we speak. And she is going to regale us about how to use the new digital archives at the library, or it's on the website.
You may need to switch your chairs around so you can see the screen.
Take a minute and do that. If you can't see the screen, I won't be offended if you move your chair out into the middle, even. Can everybody see okay? All right. Welcome to the program today, and thank you so much for inviting us. I don't know why they were giving Margaret such a bad time about just a few words. Because Margaret didn't give me a time limit for today. And if you know me, you know we can talk about libraries and library resources for a long time. Our intention today is to tell you about the Greene County Community History Archive and all the wonderful resources that are available on that. But the really good part is the second half when we get to the demonstration, because we want you to know how to use the archives. So if you'll bear with me for the first half and listen for me saying a few words, then the demonstration will be the second half. So this is a project of the Greene County Librarians Association, and I think most of you know the librarians around the county. Once in a while they change, and some of us, like Marilyn and I, have been here for a long time. So
I take the record for the longest number of years.
So I'm Jane Millard from the Jefferson Public Library, and this is Sarah Schwery, and she's our tech assistant at the library. So she's going to be running the all things computer today, and she'll talk more the second half when we do the demonstrations. Marilyn Tilley from the Sherdam Library, thank you for having us today. And to the Historical Society, thank you so much for the wonderful meal. I know Sherry would be here if she could be, and I believe Diane is headed over from the Grand Junction Library, but she may have gotten held up. She missed the wonderful meal.
Ricky has a new librarian that will start on Monday.
Ricky has a new librarian, and the Peyton librarian was unable to be here today too. So anyway, you'll see us all running around different times. So again, thank you for having us, and I'm going to talk through the first part as quickly as I can so we can get to the demonstration. And then if you have questions, we'll be glad to answer them too. That was the slide you just did. That's okay. Keep going. Keep going. Okay, so the Community History Archive of Greene County, Iowa. It is a website on the internet, and you can see the address here. It's going to be right in your way. So we've been working on this for a number of years. How many of you have tried this out? How many of you have searched the archive? Okay, a few of you, great. How many of you have ever heard of it before? Okay, I'm glad that you've heard of it. We want you to be able to use it too. So today we're going to tell you, our goal today is to learn more about the archive and learn how to use it. So I'm going to tell you the story behind the archive, how it came to be, the resources that are available on it, and a little bit more information. And then, like I said, what we really want to get to is how to do the searches, how to find information, how to know what to click on those screens, how to navigate it. So digitization preserves the past for the future. So digital archives, it's kind of one of those words that's hard to say, but I just shorten it and say digital archives. The benefits of digitizing our records are to preserve local history. We want it to stay around for a long time, and I know that's your goal too. Increase access, that was a big one for us. We wanted to make sure that it was free for people to use and that you could get to it any time of day or night. You could be up at midnight in your pajamas searching this website and no one will know. And to reduce storage in our libraries of keeping all the back issues of the newspapers. So how many of you kind of have looked through newspapers that are falling apart? realizing that it takes a lot of room to store them. This happens to be Luann Waldo's collection of Scranton journals in her back storage area. And you can see how she's wrapped them with plastic to keep the elements from deteriorating them or them getting wet. And some of those other pictures were the Grand Junction newspaper and so on, but you can see that they were in bad shape. This is a quote from Luann talking about so many people coming in and asking for information from those back issues, and she got to the point where she couldn't allow them to really go back through them because they were falling apart. And so she's really thrilled that we worked on this project and that history will be preserved. How many of you have read those columns in the Scranton Journal 20 years ago, 40 years ago, and so on? So she doesn't have to herself even go back into the back issues now. She can use the digital archives. And as she says on this slide, she was kind of waiting for us to do this. This was a big project she wanted to see done. How many of you recognize drawers full of rolls of microfilm? And going to microfilm readers and loading up the film and scrolling through it, and how it was fun. It was the preservation method we knew of in the 1970s and 80s. A lot of libraries, historical societies, genealogy societies, the State Historical Society, we were all filming newspapers just to get them into this newer method of preservation at the time, which is microfilm. But some of the downfalls of microfilm were that you kind of needed to know the date that you were looking for. Otherwise, you were going to be looking through a lot of issues of newspapers. And you had to have a lot of time. It wasn't quick. But it was fun. I spent a lot of nights late at the library with the lights off because you can see better, and scrolling through microfilm to find stories. For example, in 2004, when we had the centennial of the Jefferson Public Library, we didn't have the archive, so I was scrolling through 1904 and 03 to see stories about when our library was built, to put them in a scrapbook. So then along came the internet, and that changed all of us, right? That changed all of our lives. But it made things, gave us a new way to preserve history, a new way to access it, and a new way to store it. So that was important. So phase one of this project, building this new website full of newspapers, started back in about 2010. It took about 2 years to, before it came up live and could first be used. And then phase two started in about 2018. So the first phase was the Jefferson newspapers. The second phase, we added Junction and Cheyenne and Scranton newspapers. And so what you do to get all these resources digitized, first you have to get permission. So from the newspaper editors, you have to get permission because you don't own the copyright, they do. And so then you raise money, because it's going to cost some to do this. You find a company that you can work with, which we have worked with Advantage Archives in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, so it's an Iowa company. And I ran into them at a library conference years and years ago, and they demonstrated how you save your newspapers. And I went, oh, we need to do that. So then they digitize the records for you. So you're not sitting there photocopying and scanning, you're paying them to do that. And they created the website for us, and then you have to promote it. You have to tell people that you have it. So many of you have heard of this, but maybe you haven't tried it or known what's on there, and thought of, I would really like to search those newspapers. So we're glad to come around and demonstrate it whenever we have that opportunity. So, the partnerships that work together, oftentimes it's libraries that kind of take the lead in their communities or in their counties. And so you'll find across the country a lot of library websites have links to their digital newspapers. But we also work with the editors of the newspapers, genealogy, historical societies, and then the company that we contract with. But it also takes funding bodies to make this happen, and we would not have been able to do either phase 1 or phase 2 without generous grants from the Greene County Community Foundation. And then a lot of donors match those funds. So you can see at the bottom, the cost of phase 1 was $12,000, phase 2 was $23,500, almost double in 10 years. So it's growing industry. So it turns out it's a pretty hefty sized project financially, but it was probably the easiest fundraising that I've ever done, because everybody understands the importance of preserving history. And a lot of our history is in our newspapers. And yay to all of those editors that go way back in time that wrote those things down so we can access them today. But we thought there's a lot of other things we would like to put on there, not just newspapers. It was important to get the newspapers on there, but we have a lot of great historical resources, print materials I'm talking about. There's lots of other things too, but mostly what you're putting on here is one-dimensional. So what are some of those other resources we could have put on here? Well, we had to make sure that we didn't go against copyright. We had to make sure we had the funding to do extra resources beyond those newspapers. So we met with a gentleman named Jeff Brown at Advantage Archives in Cedar Rapids, and we went through all these printed resources to decide what would be good to add to the archive. So I'm going to hand out, or maybe, where's Marilyn? Right here. I want to make sure all of you have a list of the resources. I brought 30 copies of here, so anyone who wants to share, that would be fine. So that's what they're handing out, is a list of everything that's on the website. And it has the website address on there. It does. So I wanted you to have that information, but up on the screen you can see the newspapers from Jefferson, Chervan, Grand Junction, and Scranton, and how far back they go. Phase 1 was Jefferson, and that goes back to 1866, so just after the Civil War. Chervan goes back to 1891. Grand Junction Globe, 1905. Scranton Journal, 1884. I should mention too that some of our towns have got other newspapers. Jefferson's had Souvenir and so on. They're all in there too. If we have it on microfilm, it's on the archive now.
Did everyone get one that wanted one?
Great. Those are yours to keep and refer to. So other things that are on there include Greene County Census information, which actually is the oldest. I think it's 1854. This says 1856. You can check me on your handout. The year that the state of Iowa did a census for Greene County. That's one of the oldest resources on the archive. Birth, marriage, death information that the Genealogy Society indexed from courthouse records. Cemeteries, all of the cemeteries in Greene County. Anybody know how many there are? It's close to 30 cemeteries. Town centennial books, township histories, church histories, military records. All of these librarians from around the county contributed resources from their libraries that could be scanned and digitized. Even stories about Angus and Adeza. And so...
Are graduation pictures in there as well?
No.
No.
Nope. So go ahead and go forward.
What was the Terrell Diary?
The Terrell Diaries. Does anybody know the Terrell Diaries in the room? They're,
Weren't they carols from Scranton?
I think, I'm
Yeah, I
not
think
sure.
that's a Scranton thing.
I've not read them, Jed, but we have them, a copy of them, and they tell about the first settlers in Greene County, what it was like, then the rolling prairies that hadn't been cleared yet, the wildlife. It's really interesting to read.
person, right?
Yeah, yeah. It was one of those, it was just a personal story rather than what you would read in the newspaper and, And I'm not sure if it talks in there about encounters with American Indians in the county, but some of those go way back like that. So this is a quote from Terry Clark, who used to work at the Jefferson Library, who has very deep roots in Greene County. And she's been doing family history the hard way, going to courthouses, going to cemeteries, going to libraries, going to family history research centers, the genealogy library, and so on, for 40 years, gathering information that way. And as soon as she started looking through the archive, when you can put all those resources into one basket and search them all at the same time, she learned things about her family that she hadn't known before. And she called it buried treasure, so that's why we called our session today Mining Treasures from the Archive. Oh, yes, thank you. Sarah's helping me remember. So when you do history research, you can come up with a lot of names and a lot of dates. It's hard to flesh things out with stories. And so my father passed away before I got really interested in where he served in World War II and what all he did. And so when we were starting this archive, I asked Advantage Preservation for references. What other libraries have you done this for? And they gave me 3 websites to search. Well, unless you're from that area, you don't really know what to search by. People would know to search some of our Truman Davis and some of our names here in Greene County if you're from here, but if you're from away, you might not know what names to search for. Well, one of them that they sent was Storm Lake, Iowa, and I am originally from just north of there. And so I knew what to search for was my family last name, Millard. And I was able to trace my father's World War II journey through when he would write home, his mother would take the postcard to the newspaper and they would print it.
Wow.
And it was columns called News from the Front, and all the soldiers were writing home. They can't really do that as well now and reveal too much information, but they did then in the 40s. So it was a buried treasure for me as well. And so what's another really good source of information that might be little tidbits that you might learn about your family here in Greene County?
Business. A business.
A business, right? How about those little society columns? So-and-so came to town and we all had a family picnic, and they list everyone else that was there. Yeah, anything about your family or your community can be found on here if it was printed in the newspaper. And it's always kind of fun to look back and see what they did print in the newspaper. Sometimes it was a little scandalous. So I wanted to point out, learning new things is a little intimidating sometimes, but we have found this really, really easy to use. How many of you are comfortable doing a Google search? Raise your hand. A lot of you, okay? So this is really similar. You're searching one website and you get a list of results from whatever words you typed into the search field. So here's the search field on the Greene County Community History Archive. And then you're just going to hit return, and it's going to give you a list of when that word appeared and the different resources that are on that website. So what can you search for? Places, locations, okay, so you might want to research, Marilyn said, businesses. If your family owned a business in Scranton or in Cheyenne or anywhere in the county, type that in there and see if it comes up. Events, weather. There was a lot of weather incidents over the 150 plus years that we have newspapers on there for. We think we have bad weather now, and we have had, but there were weather events through time that are kind of interesting to read about. Sports, weddings, festivals, any kind of event. People, so your ancestors, obituaries, those society columns like we just mentioned. Interviews, can anyone think of, it would be fun to stumble across an interview done on one of your relatives or your neighbor?
Depends on which ones.
Remember when they used to, in the Jefferson newspaper, do the cooks around the county? And there was always a story that went along with those recipes. And then Tori Riley used to do those interviews about from the workplace. But, you know, if you do genealogy, which I do, it's a collection of names and dates. But I really like having the stories. So that's more fun to me to find.
Jane, the Grand Junction paper also used to do in each the repeat date, and whatever it said, sections in there, it was Rippy or kids or something like that. And I was one of those pictures, and they asked me what I wanted for Christmas, and I said I wouldn't tell them. They put in the paper.
Not to put in the paper?
You knew it was going to be quick.
I was 4 in my family.
We'll have to look that one up.
Yeah, we can look that up today.
Let's do.
We will be very careful what we search for. We'll just say that. Okay, so start out general in your search. A person, a place, or an event. And then you can narrow it down by date or by resource. So say you're going, I know that appeared in the Cheyenne newspaper about in this time period. You can narrow it down like that. The search results are going to be big, just like Google. Not as big as Google, but big, and then you can narrow it down to what you're looking for. Go ahead. Okay, before I get to this part, I'm almost done talking, and we'll get to the demonstration. Marilyn and Sarah, do you want to hand out the, I think we can, one per table. Yep. Those. Thank you.
This is for the table to share, because they're all different. Sorry, we're going to talk about some of the different ones.
Yes.
Are you still adding to the archive?
Good, good, no worries.
Yep. It is never ending. Here's quite a few articles to share. Okay, so these are some printouts. These are some printouts that we made just for fun to show you some examples of what you can find on the archive. So if you pass those around, share them around the table, you're welcome to take them. But you're going to find things that, there's one whole packet that's going around about events that happened in Cheyenne. There's some information about Lauren Shriver from Peyton. And you notice how big that one is printed? And then other ones are printed small enough, it's hard to read. We're going to talk to you a little bit about how that happened. There's the history of the new museum, the new historical museum in Jefferson, when it moved from the north side of the square to the building that you're in now. That story's in there. There was a bank robbery in Peyton in 1911. And Donna Reed visited in Jefferson in 1942. That's in there. We had Ukrainian visitors in 1998. In 1912, the livery closed down and the auto garage opened. 1912. Horses were going out, cars were coming in. So I want you to just kind of visualize some examples that you can print out from your searches with those that, thank you to the county librarians that found those examples for you to look at today. Yep, just ready. So just some other information about the archive that I thought you might be interested in. We get usage reports every month. So who do you think might be using the archive? Just Greene County people? Remember when I said it was important to us to have free access from anywhere? And so in the last 12 months, 2,026 people have searched the archive from 45 states and 9 other countries. Isn't that something? Yes. People are finding us. Let me see if I can tell you the states that didn't have anyone searching. Utah, Alaska, West Virginia, Louisiana, and whatever's right beside Louisiana. What is it? Other than that, the other 45 states, there's somebody looking at our Greene County history over the last year. And some of those other countries, you know, it's kind of hard to read on the screen, so I brought it in. The next one after the United States, the most common one is the United Kingdom, and then Japan, and China, Cyprus. Who's living in Cyprus? 14 people. Yeah. And then after that, Germany, India, Singapore, Canada, and France. But I've seen other countries on there different times too, and I don't know if they're just stumbling upon our history or if we have someone living there who's very interested in our county history. Thought you might be interested in that. Also, Jed was asking, will we have a phase 3? Will we add more resources to the archive? Yes. The answer is there's no end in sight. Obviously, we have to have funding for it. But we thought we were pretty thorough, gathering a lot of resources for phase 2. So we can say that we have all the newspapers from the county on there, and then all these other resources that you see on that list. But you know how you finish a project and then you find out you missed one thing? So the librarians are keeping track. Whenever any of you tell us, hey, this isn't on there, as long as we don't have to deal with copyright issues, we will add as we can raise funds for it. So if you have a desire to support the next phase 3, you can leave a donation at any county library, and we'll add to it someday. Let's see, and another question would be, how current are the newspapers? So 2 of the newspapers are still in publication, the Jefferson and the Scranton newspapers. And our agreement with the editors is that we will stay 1 year behind the print issue. So every year, Scranton Library and every year Jefferson Library pays to have another year added. And it's about $275, or it might be more than that now, to add that every year. Like I said, the price keeps going up. Also, Advantage Archives in Cedar Rapids is a worldwide company. And so they have done a lot of this for a lot of communities, counties, libraries, historical societies, whoever they're working with. So they've created lots and lots of these websites. We were fairly early on, not at the very beginning, but since then their company has just grown so much. And history is not the only thing that they preserve. They work with medical and legal documents as well. This is a map of the United States that Sarah found that shows all the websites that they've created, all the places that they have digitized information from. Remember I said earlier, a lot of times if you'll just go on a library website, if you're trying to do research somewhere else than Greene County, go to their library website and see if they have a history archive that you can search. So, not on this one, but when you're looking at this on the internet, if you hover over any one of these little arrows and it says your place of origin or wherever you want to do research, you just click on that. So here's the naming schema. If you kind of understand the naming schema, you can also get yourself to that other site. So for instance, the Jefferson Public Library website is jefferson.lib.ia.us. If you take Jefferson out and you put Sheridan in, you get the Sheridan Public Library website. If you take Sheridan out and you put Scranton in, you get the Scranton website, library website. The naming schema is the same. So Advantage Archives does that as well with their websites. So this one says greencounty.advantage-preservation.com. It used to say Jefferson when we did phase 1. When we added phase 2 and all the other resources, we had them change it to Greene County. So sometimes it's a community, sometimes it's a county, depends on who worked on the project. So you can take out Greene County and I could put in Storm Lake and that website would come up. Does that make sense about the naming schema?
And I mentioned too that each library in our county, if you go to our web page, there's a link that will take you directly to the archives.
Right. So on that handout where it gives the address, I gave them all away. Betty, I'm going to borrow yours. Right here. That's kind of long. Don't feel like you have to type that in. You can just go to your library website, click on the link, and it'll take you to the archive. Okay. Are we at the end of You're at the end of listening to me talk. Again, we want to thank you for having us today. We're ready to go into the demonstration portion of our program. Go ahead.
So,
There was a little bit more after that, I think. I think there was one more, but it was just that we're ready to go to the demonstration. Do you have another question?
Can you print things larger than this?
We're going to talk about that. You know, like that Schreiber one is really big, and then some of them look like they're the whole front page of the newspaper, and it's so tiny you can't read it. We're going to show you how to do that. Make sure you've got a good seat so you can see this.
there's 2 things I want to show before we actually do search. One is, this is what that map is when you get to it. You're going to click it directory and it'll take you to this page right here. You can browse by state. You can make this map bigger if you wanted to see. And actually, it's not just the United States. If you see, there's actually, I noticed, sorry, like you can get to Cuba.
And there's the dot in Cuba is a misprint.
Yeah, but look up here.
It's supposed to be in Louisiana, and whoever entered it in the
Here,
wrong
I'm
place.
in Alaska Media Newspapers. There's 2 in Alaska. Well, actually, there's more like 5 in Alaska, but the 2 up here, 3 down here. There's Petersburg Public Library. So, you know, these are like, so you can start zooming in, trying to find closer. So this one was a collection of yearbooks. not newspapers, that kind of thing. I just wanted to the person who was asking about, we don't currently have them, but there are probably places out there. So if somebody you know went to school somewhere else, go ahead and explore their archive. They might have gotten permission. And then the other thing I wanted to refer to is just what Marilyn was saying, which is, here's the front page of our website. You scroll down and it says right there, Greene County Archives. It'll take you straight there, like that. In the same way with Sheridan Public Library, whichever library you're using. So here's Sheridan, you might be used to seeing that. She's got it right here. See, Greene County Archives. So you can just click there, and it'll take you straight there.
So about the schools, we feel like the yearbooks are property of the schools, so we would need to work with them to get them digitized. Also, I don't know, are you familiar with, like census information is not released for like 74 years to protect the privacy. And so we try to be conscientious about not putting everything of those who are still living out there on the internet. It does happen, of course, because like I said, we're only a year behind it in the newspapers. We're a little careful about that.
From that front page, when you want that map, when you get here to the archive, just go up here where it says directory, and that's how you'll get that map of everywhere, which is what I put on, but I can show you. Click it, and you'll be right on that page where you can go by state or however you want to go.
So are you ready to try a couple of searches? We have a willing volunteer or victim, however you want to do that.
Depends on what we find out.
Picking on Margaret and Abby today. They have an ancestor, Dr. Ben Hamilton.
Did you say Benjamin or Ben?
It's both. I mean, he died in the 70s and he was in World War I and he lived here throughout most of his life. And it was Dr. Ben is what we called him because his name was Benjamin Hamilton.
So I'm going to say, if you start
We're
with
gonna start with just Ben Hamilton.
but I'm gonna,
Yeah.
we're just gonna start with Ben Hamilton. You just
We
type.
don't know how he was referred to in
Right.
these different
So we're gonna do
resources.
that and hit enter, and what do you see? Showing,
10,771 instances of Ben Hamilton.
Ben or Hamilton.
Who wants to go through 10,000 search results? But do you see how that's like a Google search? Type it in, hit enter, or hit search, and it finds a list of results. Our problem here is it looked for all the Bens and all the Hamiltons.
Should have put Jefferson, Iowa.
No, she's going to show you. A little trick. Now we're going to tell you tips and tricks, okay?
Now, we're gonna
On the
go
screen.
quote Ben Hamilton.
To keep his name together.
This tells, and if you look, do you have, can I see that page, please?
Oh, no space, is that what you said?
No, no.
Quotations around Ben Hamilton.
The,
Quotations?
I want the
Quotation.
counter sheet. Do you have it?
I didn't know.
Can I borrow that back again from you, Betty? We should have kept one for
If you
ourselves.
look, I actually brought 31. If you look on the very last page, on the front of the last page, this is why I'm doing that. It says right there, example, Abraham Lincoln. The quotes are there so the search engine knows that the word Abraham must be immediately followed by the word Lincoln. So now I told it, Ben has to be followed by Hamilton or else I don't want to see it. Now look at your results.
642. So it took it down from 10,000 to 642, just putting those quotations around it. Now, we still don't know if we are going to be happy with our results, because it might be that we need to search by Dr. Ben Hamilton, or Benjamin Hamilton, or Dr. Benjamin Hamilton, or his initials, or something like that. So let's look at some of the results, though.
So one's Mrs. Ben Hamilton, there's doctor, lots of these are doctors.
Wasn't his dad a doctor?
His dad was a doctor and his dad was named Benjamin too. So there are two of
Ah, the
them. And they were both
plot
doctors here.
This
But
one
yeah.
looks like it might have been a society page. And Mrs. Ben Hamilton, last Thursday evening, guests of John Black.
thickets. Okay, for the sake of time purposes, let's
I
move down the list just a little bit and see if you can find something interesting about Ben Hamilton. So it gives you just a few lines.
Mrs. Ben Hamilton and children returned home last Friday. Dr. Ben Hamilton, extension letter for sale. No, that's.
Keep going. Okay, there you go. Dr. Ben Hamilton attended the State Medical Society meeting from the Jefferson Bee, May 25th, 1910. She's going to point out the name of the newspaper. That's a link. She's going to click on it. We're going to go to that paper. And you see how it highlights Ben Hamilton? So you don't even have to look all over the newspaper for that.
That is amazing.
It is. This is the actual newspaper or an image of it that we're looking at.
1910.
And it turns out it's just one of those little short blurbs here. We don't know that until we get to it, whether it was going to be a long article or just a mention. It's called People and Society, but let's pretend that that's just a really valuable piece of information that Margaret and Abby want a copy of. Go ahead, tell them how.
So there are a couple different ways to do it. Just like anybody who's been in the library and talked to me, we can always figure out a way. So if the first way isn't working, try the second way I'm going to show you, or call one of us at the library.
Let's say that we don't know how to do it and we want to just print it from here.
You want to
Do
just,
your print preview.
okay.
Can you? Okay, so Jed was asking, can we make this bigger so we can read it?
Because otherwise it will look like
If
this.
she prints it right from here,
It's not even going to fit on one page, they're trying to say.
it's so big it doesn't fit on one
What will
page.
happen is here, it'll actually do this.
Just like on our computers.
Yeah, and it's gonna try and fit it, if you mess with the setting because you want that side of the article, it will do it, it'll scrunch it all to one page. But if you imagine how big that newspaper page was, you're not gonna be able to read anything once it's that small.
So now that's how not to do it. So now we'll go back and she'll show you a better way.
So I like to take this little square, because I know that I only want a little square.
So it's right up here at the top on the task bar. It's a little cropping kind of square.
And it gives me this little window.
Oh,
I just take this window where I want it. Maybe I wanted more of this because I want to know what else was happening that day or that week. So I go there. So that's all I
She
want.
clicked and dragged until she found her article in the highlighted
Notice at
area.
the bottom, there's a little right arrow. So when you've got the space that you want, you just click that little right arrow, and it's gonna get me to see the little wheel going up there, it's gonna there. So it just took that little piece, just like if I cut it out of the newspaper. It tells me right down here where it's from and when. I'm gonna click next.
print.
I
How
want
long
to-
ago did you get all this done?
2020 is when phase 2 made its debut.
2020.
Yeah.
We're not too far behind then. Learning.
Well, no, not too.
No, if all I wanted to do was print, like Jed said, I would just click that print button from here, and now this is your piece of paper, and that's how big it would be on there, like that Lauren Shriver one that you all saw. So then, that's just it, and you can actually make it smaller too, but I don't know why you want to. But that's-
8 by 10 is as large as you can go.
You could do
It might
14
be pretty-
and a half
If you
by
want to
14.
save it to your computer and make a scrapbooking type page that's bigger, you could do that, but within the website itself.
That was the print button down here in the left-hand corner. That's if all you wanted to do right now was print it, but what if you wanted to save this, you could email it to your brother, or just have it for yourself and maybe work with it later. That's when you want the download button. Okay? But you might want to go see what your other options are. You can add, if any of you are into adding tags to your images in your computer so you know what you're looking for, you could actually share it straight from here to your Facebook or Twitter page if you're into that kind of thing. But they always will be your options down here in the left to either just print or download it to your device. So you can click on the next and you can click on the back and it won't matter, but you can, so we're going to download this one.
So those of you that follow Margaret on Facebook,
Watch out.
Might see something about Dr. Ben.
Now I've downloaded it, it's on my machine now. So now it'll be on your computer at home, and you can open it up from there, and it will just be like any of your pictures that you have, you can put it. You can,
It's just amazing, isn't it, Joyce?
Then you have to save it,
it's saved now on your computer. As
but
soon
once
as
you download it.
Once you download it, that means it's taking that clipping and saving it to your machine.
But you still might want to put it in a file folder so you
It
know
will be in your downloads
Yes,
folder,
yes.
so you'll want to, if it were me, I would make a whole folder just for this kind of stuff, you
Yeah.
know, like newspaper research or whatever you want to call it. Or it may be different ones for, and then the file will be named something crazy, and you'll probably want to rename, because it'll just be a bunch of numbers and letters. So,
You won't recognize it the same time.
You know, with computers, there's more than one way to do things.
and I can show you, so,
So I tend to copy my articles onto a Word document and make them look like a scrapbook
I
page.
was just about to show
So I want the date
Sure.
with it.
Sure.
And I print, when I was looking for my dad's work, service record, I compiled all these little tidbits onto scrapbook pages and then printed them out.
I forgot
Then you
this.
ordered it, you ordered it chronologically.
I did, because you could drag them around.
Yeah.
Yep.
I forgot this. Since the last update, actually, it took away the string of letters and numbers. Do you see now? I'm in my download, let me make this bigger. I'm in my download folder. Today I downloaded, what does it say? Page 5 of the Jefferson Bee, published in Jefferson, Iowa on Wednesday, May 25th. That's that.
But it doesn't tell you what it is until
No,
you
it's
read
in your
it.
download folder, so if you double click it and
Yeah.
remind yourself of what it is.
Yeah.
So you might want to rename that, you know, if you wanted to just say, this was when Dr. Ben went to a state medical meeting, or whatever you might want to call it. Yep.
So
You can handle it just like any other photo file after you get it downloaded.
Sarah and I get excited and we can go down rabbit holes really quickly.
Oh, boy.
Plan this.
We kill so much time doing this.
We fight over people calling and asking us for information.
Do you want to
we
take
can
this one?
find.
So I can totally get it.
So can you go back and show us some of the things that we discovered just the other day about, you can make your article look really old.
So, or really,
What is that called?
let's see, the filters.
The filters.
So here's some examples of what filters you can, I looked up the very first Belltower Festival just because I had to look something up. So, this is the exact same article, downloaded different ways with filters. So I will show you at what step that is. But look at, I don't know why you picked the rainbow one, but there's the rainbow one too.
I like the rainbow. Okay, so go
that's-
back to Ben,
We're gonna get Ben
because we
again.
need to show them about by date order and resource.
Oh, you mean go back to the search?
Go back to the search. Yeah. So one more fun thing and then we'll get serious again.
There's a year at Suffolk Academy.
You want me to just put that in?
Yeah, find whatever you want to, but you know.
If I can type today. Well, let's let Margaret pick one.
I can't see that far away. Just go ahead and pick one.
Dr. Ben Hamilton Jr. is the class president.
That's him.
Okay.
Where is he at? Where is he at? There he is.
So she's gonna do that cropping tool again.
Yep. It always gives it to you at the very top, so you get, if you don't see it, it's above where you're at. Just go grab it and pull it down to where you need it. See, I was so far down, you might think, oh, it didn't give me the box, but it's just waiting for you up top there. Make it bigger. Okay.
This is like magic, so don't blink.
I'm sorry, I go too.
I just learned this the other day.
I still don't see which one you click on before you drag it down.
It's
Which one is
this-
it?
This little
it's this
square
right
box.
here.
If you want to download that whole newspaper page, you click the download button, but right next to it
Just that, okay, that's square.
on the left is that little square, and if you hover over it, it will say the word crop.
That's a cropping.
We've all learned that we're not gonna break our computers, right? So just try different things with this cropping.
So once you have the area selected, now I'm down here in the little right-hand corner with the next. X if I got it wrong. Like that's not what I wanted.
Right.
Over, the caret arrow is when you want to go to the next part. That's when you start getting your options. That's
Wait
what,
for it to come up on your screen. So there it is.
yeah.
And
It
she's
always
gonna,
gives you the date and information.
it does if you do it this way. Yeah. Next. Yes, it's important to
Well,
have
and you'll
your
notice
date.
sometimes when I would do it the old way, I would end up handwriting that stop button, right? You try and remember, and what if you printed it and you didn't think to write that down, you know?
It's like the internet that way too. If you don't write it down, you may never find that again. So do write down your date. There's a couple different ways to do it.
So I clicked next, there it is. I can, like I said, always either print or download right now. But right here where you can add tags, maybe you're not into that, right underneath it, it says, has a question for you. Add an artistic filter to your clip. It says, no thank you, or yes please. So now you can make it, like that's the rainbow one we saw earlier. You could pick that, you can preview
We
them.
don't know why you would.
Make it harder to read if you want, you know.
Is that the one that looks old?
Sure.
No, there's sepia at the end here. Yeah, I like that. That's the one.
You know,
Sepia.
like the old crumbling newspaper look?
If you're really wanting to keep it in keeping with your scrapbook, maybe you would want to do that. You could stain it with a tea bag too, but. This green, there's a little bit of a pinkish blue.
So that they put in a few fun things. And they do update their software from time to time, so, you know, they might add more to this, more fun things. This was just something I didn't know about. Sarah showed it to me. Well, I think we were playing with it the other day, and I said, what is that?
I said it's a filter.
I hadn't seen it before, so now
I
I
like
can
that it
make.
says no thank you or yes please. No,
Yes.
thank you. No.
So do you want to go back to your search and let's see?
Can
what
I
it
ask you one
says?
question?
Absolutely.
Because I don't do it exactly the same way, and I want to see what you did. How did you make it larger? Did you hit print, and then what did you do after that?
Nothing. Once you have it cropped,
It'll make
it's
it just
only gonna
be that size,
So
so
it's
that's
not
what,
trying to cram all that onto a page.
Yeah. yeah.
But if you also wanted to download it, then you could treat it like a JPEG and drag it bigger.
Right.
to
That's what you did,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, there's some different
Okay,
ways to.
yeah,
enlarge
There's
that
about 3
screen.
ways to do all this
Yeah.
stuff.
Right.
Trying to keep it simple.
So back to your search. So she's just going back on the back arrow, right? To get back to your list of search results.
So say you clicked on the newspaper and it wasn't what you wanted after all, just click on
You
your
do this all the time.
browser's back button.
You do
So-
this all the time.
So I don't need to stand in front of you. I'm coming to this side so I can show you what's on the left-hand side of the screen. So say Margaret says, I'm only interested in seeing the first time that Ben Hamilton appeared in our newspapers. So right here, you can see the Jefferson Bee, 1871 to 1991. So Sarah, if you click on that one,
Refine your search. You have to refine your search.
okay, go down farther then. Take it down. That's the resource. So he was found in, sorry, can you go back up? The Jefferson newspapers, the Freelance, the Souvenir, the past and present of Greene County, Iowa. You probably recognize that book. The Grand Junction Globe,
Yes, and what it's telling
Great
you is
Journal.
how many times he appears in each of them. So you'll notice with the Grand Junction Globe, there's only one.
You see that? He didn't make the paper very often in Grand Junction. And the Sheridan Reporter 5 times.
But you'll notice the Jefferson Bee, 435 pages.
So go down farther than that, and that's where you can see the first instance, 1890, that decade.
There were 2 pages that
Let's see,
the words Ben Hamilton together appear.
did it have when he was born? What was that first?
Well, he was a junior, right?
Yes, he was a junior,
Yeah.
so it could be his father, or it could be,
Here they are.
he was alive in 1890, so it could be him too.
But this is how you can use the dates or the resources to narrow down your search. If you only wanted to know the decade of the 1920s, you could go on that one.
Here's that earliest instance of him.
Where are you getting all this?
I'm wondering when the first computer class at the library begins.
Anytime, it's, we're glad to do the group demonstrations, but definitely come into any of our
Yeah, I know,
libraries,
but
we'll sit down beside you
Each room had
and show you.
The guests
Absolutely.
numbered about 35 and met at the foot of the stairs by Masters, Frank Sparks, Ben Hamilton, and Harry Belding.
So that's him, because that's when he was a little boy, he was a master.
After about 10 o'clock, various tables of crokinole and whist were played, and other games and music prevailed during the evening. At about 11 o'clock, an elegant supper was partaken of. They ate late, didn't they?
Isn't it fun to hear the words and how they said it then?
The spacious dining room doors were opened, and previous to supper, small bouquets of daisies and various flowers with pretty bows of ribbon were passed, tables being represented by colors, and those whose quotations came in contact occupied the same tables.
Time seemed to fly until at a late hour, the lights gave their farewell warning. That's a good one.
It's an enjoyable evening and congratulated Dr. and Mrs. Hamilton on their hospitality.
Would you have known anything like that? Whatever that game
Yeah,
is.
what is that game?
Crokinole
Crokinole and whist.
and whist.
Well, we've heard of it.
Finance.
And this is what I talk about when I talk about the things you learn on the other, because now I would spend an hour trying to figure out how to play crokinole.
I just want to kind of check and make sure we've covered what we wanted to. I'm sorry that this took longer than maybe your usual program length, but we've had a lot of fun showing it to you. We'll stay as long as you want to stay, but you won't offend us if you feel like you need to leave. Sarah, there might be a few other tips, and I'm looking at this page again in the
Please use
handout.
that page. On the front and back of the very last page, I put in a few tips, but I also show you how to get to the website that has a whole lot of useful tips for first-time searches and things like that. Things that you might not have thought of, like women weren't always referred to by their first name out before a certain time period. So looking for Miss Dr. Hamilton, Dr. and Mrs. Hamilton, not, it would never have been her first name. Yeah.
Oftentimes with women, it's Mrs. whatever their husband's name
Another
is.
clue that I learned early on was, because I have a relative, his name was William, and I couldn't find anything, but it was always WM, always in the paper. And it's probably for space. You know, there was another one, John, that was always, or Jonathan, that was always shortened to something. So those tips are in there, the basics, but there's another site where you can go to find more tips like that. It's just trying to get yourself to think in a way that how would it have been published, not how do I know it.
Here's another example. How many times have you seen THOS instead of Thomas? JNO for John, Jonathan. Have to kind of think about the time period, maybe even misspellings.
I've come across a lot of
No one
those.
could ever spell my dad's first name, ever.
What was his
So,
name?
Merrill, M-A-R-R-E-L-D.
Meryl?
Millard. Yeah, it was a tongue twister.
Merrill Millard.
Yeah. And we were forever getting mail from Merrill Millard. Anyway, so those are good tips. And how about a search from one of you? Does anybody, not a scandal, we don't want to besmirch anyone's name. Does anybody have a,
Bonaventura Asperger.
okay.
Woo-hoo. Again, I got
Bonaventure,
Bonaventura,
B-O-N-A.
Bentura Asperger. He's one of the first ones to be buried in the Catholic cemetery.
B-O-N. B-O-N-A. Ventura, city in California. And then Osberger. Okay, I don't know that we needed to use the quotations on this one. There can't be too many Bonaventure.
Yeah, that's too narrow. All right, let's try it.
Maybe they didn't know how to spell his name, right?
Or how would they have abbreviated?
B-O-N-A.
No, B-O-N-V, like in victory,
Okay,
E-N-T-U-R-A.
R-A.
It's like a spelling bee of your ancestors' names. So we put the A in there the first time and we didn't find anything, so hopefully we'll find something this
Look
time.
at that.
Bonventura. Ventura.
Right.
Did he have initials?
I don't know.
Try just.
He had a son named Martin.
Try just B. Osberger. She's given us a real mystery here.
Well, he was
The
one
hardest
of the,
thing Mr. B. Osberg. B. Osberg. You know what? They didn't want to spell it either.
that's it though. There's not another B. Ausberger, so that's it.
But, you know, that's a good example of, they didn't spell, you know,
I can see-
precious space in the newspaper.
It's not just, yeah, and it could have, I was gonna say, a lot of times it was a space thing.
Joyce, I think you would just really have to work with that and try some different, what he might have been called. You might want to find a middle initial there.
Our
Anybody
daughter
else?
was visiting her grandparents, and she had a picture taken, and that was in the paper.
Okay,
Sarah, S-A-R-A-H,
okay.
Hanneman, H-A-N-A-M-A-N.
It would have been in the quote.
J-N-A-M-A-N.
Hanneman.
Their granddaughter, Sarah Hanneman,
1974.
that sound right?
Yeah, 74.
There it is.
Let's see, and you're reminding me of something, so thank you for saying that.
Here it is in the Rippey area.
That's the birth then.
He's looking for.
This is a baptism, yeah.
Oh, baptism.
He's looking for when there was a photo.
Well,
Take a look at some of those examples that we printed out, and tell me what you think of the photos.
Black.
Photos do not come out well.
yeah, sometimes they don't.
That one's better.
Here's where she's attending a wedding reception, but look at some of these wedding pictures. Look at these wedding pictures.
It's like you probably have a better one at home, but if this is your ancestor, it may be the only thing that you ever find.
Her name shows up there in the Glade wedding.
Yeah, she's in the, she was at the reception. That's
Tina was our niece, Christine
Oh.
McLean.
So Dale would just take some going down
Yeah,
the
yeah.
circle.
But you recognize this wedding, is that what you're saying?
Yep,
yep.
Yeah.
That was the farm where we live.
If, in Joyce's example, if you couldn't find anything and you went and you knew the cemetery that the person was buried in, could you search that cemetery and then zero in on that?
Does somebody have an
Find that
example?
name?
Let's try it. Does somebody have an example of a name buried in a cemetery in Greene County?
Well, I just gave it to you.
Try an old one, for my family, John B. John.
John B. John.
John J-O-H-N,
Yes,
the initial B,
yes,
and J-O-H-N again.
yes.
That's pretty simple.
That was interesting choice of first name.
Yeah.
Well, there's 32 results here.
He's specifically asking about a
He's
cemetery.
buried in the Pleasant Hill Cemetery. Fought in the Civil War.
Okay, she clicked on more at the end of the list of resources. Now she's looking for a cemetery. So he may not be, do you know on his headstone, is it John B. John?
I'm pretty sure it is.
Okay. That one we would probably have to dig around for.
Well, I think it's
Just like these.
She's gonna try an advanced search.
Yeah.
This is where we learn too.
Yeah, I haven't.
Try and narrow it down to a cemetery index.
Yeah.
On these cemeteries from the counties, you don't have the Catholic. You got the public cemetery municipal in Jefferson, but you don't have the Catholic. And
It may be that it's just not listed on there, but it's part of that cemetery.
Please say for John.
All right. It will be on there. They just didn't print it.
What cemetery?
Pleasant Hill.
Pleasant Hill.
Pleasant Hill.
I have a challenge for you.
Green County, Iowa Cemeteries, Highland.
We all start.
Yeah.
I have a challenge for you.
I think I have.
We're not seeing Pleasant Hill, right?
I'm not gonna read it very fast.
I'm gonna go back to the library and look in the book, you know, the cemetery index book and see how he's listed. That's cheating, but yeah. Go ahead.
Christian Science Church in Green County.
Christian Science Church, okay. Maybe just Christian Science.
What is? But I didn't put church.
If there was one up by Peyton.
Listed by townships.
That was in the Grand Junction newspaper.
52, well, here, someone up.
You would kind of probably like to have like a history.
Carolyn, you know, I just, yeah, I wonder how its name is. I'd like to put that in your statement.
Up in the courthouse.
No.
Go back up, maybe.
There's an earlier one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Ooh, there was a scandal.
A lot of the people there,
Or recommend watch study of dead scientist leader.
Boston, like, oh, yeah. We got excited there for a second, so that if you go through all the search results. Trying to find it. Does anybody else have any other questions?
read the advertising, that's funny.
I love the advertising. One of those pages, I just like seeing, I start by looking at what prices were. I love that. But then it's really fun for me to look at the one ads and how they phrase, like they could never post ads for jobs right now the way they did then. You know, like, girl wanted for 10 cents to clean my rooms. You know, what?
Enos Butler.
Oh, yes, he'd be in there.
Enos
Or somebody's.
Spell that.
Send me the door with their weather. Is that weather?
With a K on the end, right?
It does
Oh,
29 different results.
this one's
You're one of the first ones in Green County.
story of early Green. This is it. This is a whole article on the story of him as an early settler.
And it's continued, which means earlier probably it started on the first page of the newspaper.
Yeah, this is page 2 of the newspaper, so it probably started on each one. We can go back and look. Let's go back a page, which is all the way to navigate your pages. You can do it right up here. Back and forth. So, well, look what happened in this paper.
The Twister mauled the farm.
What's the area?
This is Tuesday, May 10th, 1960. But then I'm looking for the
I was looking for a name, but I didn't see it.
first part of his. Oh, look at those pictures.
Oh, wow.
Lambs. See these little lambs up here?
What's the date on that?
That is May
1960.
10th, 1960.
Okay. There's too much talking there. I can't hear you.
So you see how we could do this all day, right? I want to thank you for your kind attention. I want to make sure that we've achieved our goal. You've seen the archive, you have the idea of how to use it. You know you can come to any library and we'll demonstrate it. We'll sit down, we'll be happy to sit down with you and help you find your information. But it is available 24/7 on the internet. Okay? Does anybody not know what the Greene County Community History Archive is? Thank you.